Let's celebrate Easter. Listen with me to the entrance prayer. I have risen, and I am still with you. You have laid your hand upon me, too wonderful for me. I am still with you. You have laid your hand upon me, too wonderful. As we celebrate Easter, do you find strength in these words? In today's world, what could be a better Easter gift? I have risen, and I am still with you. From death to life is God's victory. I have a close friend who has been a member of AA for over 30 years, and she often tells me stories of her life and concludes each one with, "Now that's a God story." I love that image. God's stories are truly Easter stories. Out of the ordinary, the Easter story appears. I'll bet you have God stories too. It's the ever-present death to life wrestling in our lives. Eastering is God's invitation to find life even in the messiness of death. I had an Easter story moment recently that left me to ponder how in the ordinary of life's ebb and flow, death and life emerge. I was seated in a waiting room, and to my surprise, there was only one other person present. We began to chat, and I simply cannot forget Jim, nor how the words, "I am still with you," reverberated. Born in eastern Kentucky, one of 8 siblings, Jim's father first came to Cincinnati looking for work. As soon as he could, he piled the family in a station wagon, and Cincinnati became home. After graduation, Jim joined the Army and served in Vietnam. He still has the shrapnel in his knee to prove it. Jim married and spoke lovingly of his wife, 2 grown children, and his grandchildren. He wanted me to know they were Christians and had a good life together. Jim retired from GE after 38 years as a master mechanic, and suddenly his life took an awful turn. Jim's wife died in the early days of COVID, having suffered a severe reaction to her first COVID vaccination. She complained of backache, and when they finally went to the emergency room, she was in renal failure, and it all went fast. And there was Jim, alone in his home. I had mentioned a bit of my background as a sister, my years in Brazil, and my work with Brazilian immigrants in the States. Jim told me how he got to know his Hispanic neighbors who lived behind him. He commented that the children often serve as interpreters for their parents, whom he described as hardworking, with little time to study English. And it happened that on one of his first nights alone in his home, there was a knock on the back door, and he answered to find his neighbors, mother and child, holding a basket of fruit for him. Mom said she was sorry, as the child smiled shyly. Jim was overwhelmed. He continued to tell me about immigrant laborers he meets and how hard they work. From the death of his beloved wife, his neighbors brought new life. So our conversation continued as Jim leaned in to say how grateful he was that we met, since it's not often in today's world you can talk about immigrants with a stranger in public. He told me about the church he attends and how much he needs the fellowship he finds there. It's a small community of caring people, he said with a big smile. As he got up to leave, he asked if he could give me a hug, and once more he thanked me for being there with him. So that's my God story this Easter, reminding me and you how in the most unsuspecting of circumstances, God is present. I am still with you. You laid your hand upon me, and it is wonderful. Thank you, Jim, for bringing Easter home to me. Happy Easter.